I was doing my Masters in Sydney at the College of Fine Arts, and I'd already studied it as an exchange student in America, in Ohio, and I found that to be disappointing compared to the great school of New York. But I learned a lot about the international study and travel. So I kept applying for scholarships, and I applied and I applied and I applied, and of course, luckily the stars all lined up at the same time, and I got 2 big scholarships to study part of my Masters in New York. And so I took off by myself to study at Hunter College, which was a fantastic master's program, about 150 graduates in the visual arts department, and we had a big building in Manhattan on the west side near Hell's Kitchen, so it's really interesting, diverse area. And we all got private studio space that would set us down the island in Manhattan. So I was really lucky to study there as part of the program. It was a program by coursework, whereas I've been doing masters by research, so I had to go back into a class environment, and that was challenging. But also really interesting, and I had an art theory teacher who was a great pattern painter, and my art was about patterns and design, so she was very inspiring. But she prefaced the whole course with, we're not going to look at any art, and we're not going to talk about any artists, but we're going to spend 8 hours a week doing art theory. And so she proceeded to give us the history of 20th century philosophy. We had to read a philosopher a week, and then paraphrase it, so write paraphrase it, no quoting, into a paper and present it back to the class every week, which was extremely hard, and I finally learned to write. The best way to learn to write is to actually put it in your own words and not quote. So that was pretty intense. So that was great, because then a lot of that information fed back into my Masters. So I spent the first 6 months trying to prove myself. So I recreated paintings I'd made before, because I was so nervous, because I was a Fulbright scholar and a Rotary scholar, and they kept milling me out to do talks, and it was with lots of intellectuals, lots of lawyers, and they just didn't really want to hear about how joyful colour was. So that was quite intimidating. So I remade paintings. Also, they told me I couldn't get a work visa if I didn't get straight A's in every single subject. So I needed to work in the summer to survive. So I made my paintings and did all that, and then got my straight A's, so I could work. In the summer, I worked at the Guggenheim Museum, just selling tickets, but everyone exactly had that reaction. And when I got back and had it on my CV, everyone was like, have a job, have a job. I just sold tickets. So yeah, that was really good. And then I decided I'd branch out and I'd change my work and be inspired by my whole experience and what I was learning at art school there. And I started, and I've been doing all this work with stencils and quite highly constructed paintings that were very graphic and layered, and everything was process, and no direct drawing or painting. And I decided I was going to get out of paintbrush again and pencil and back to the old-fashioned tools. And I took this drawing class, and I did these oil pencil drawings that were really colourful and really terrible. And I was so proud of them because I'd actually just broken through a bit of a hurdle. And I put them up in for a class critique, and a few of the people were like, and the teacher was like, have you ever thought of using stencils? And I was like, I just got away from you. But it was actually really great, because then I spent the next 6 months really exploring, and I was totally immersed in it. I got tons of free tickets to events, and because I was a Fulbright scholar, but I didn't really use them very much because I was so focused on getting into my work and using the fabulous studios. So it was all, yeah, it was great. Then I had to come home because I ran out of money because the dollar was 0.5 euros, and my huge amount of scholarships were sucked into the exchange rate. So that was it.
So you spoke briefly before that you studied at 4 different art schools, but predominantly at Metropolitan Art City art school.
Yeah.
And that you trained as a painter.
Yeah.
But once you started teaching the tape, you realised that your media system started to change.
Yeah.
Which way?
Okay. So I spent all those years at all those other. I loved my undergrad art school. Like it was a 4-year degree at the time. It was fully immersive. We had 24-hour access. There was more money back then, and so it was, to me, it was like those 4 years were the best years of my life. Just being immersed in that at art school in writing. So I kept spending the whole rest of my life trying to get back there. Luckily, I kind of have, being an art teacher. So the thing was, though, that it was the whole doctrine we were taught was discipline specific. So being in the department, so the painting department, it's also very modernist in its ideology that you refine and refine and refine and become a master of that particular discipline. And I also felt that I was constantly being told you can never make money off your art, and if you do, somehow you sold out. So there was this real kind of anti-commercial rhetoric going on, this intellectualisation of it, which was fine, and I used to have plenty of arguments with my dad about how I was never going to be Ken going, and now I really admire the guy. Wow, he was up to something. That's a good guy. So, anyway, so blah blah blah. So I kept studying painting, and I was afraid of doing other things. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I was allowed. I had to just become the best painter in this particular way. And it was only really after I started teaching tape and started teaching design process and working with different disciplines and artists that I realised a lot of that was holding me back, and that I could actually explore and take risks. And I've never really done proper diaries before. So yeah, hammering it home to some new students about having to do visual diaries and design process and explore things and sample things and try different approaches. So I started trying it, partly too with some exhibitions we had with the other teachers, I thought, where we actually deliberately tried to challenge ourselves and be experimental. Like when we had an exhibition called Serendipity, where the aim was to see what could happen through different kinds of processes and collaboration as well. So we worked collaboratively on things, and that really then challenged me to kind of push it. So it enabled me to make the leap because I was working with other people and in a safe space that said we're doing this, we're doing this, teach us to work. So let's do this right. So that was how it sort of happened. So then I started, the major segue was the Serendipity exhibition and working collaboratively with Paul, and then the big show that Paul and I put together, where I leapt into the world's first guest.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, have you always incorporated colour into your pieces?
Yeah. Well, I've always been obsessed with colour. Colour, it just makes me so happy. It gives me so much joy. And ever since I was little, I just remember the most exciting thing, the beginning of the school year, and most art-related people can relate to this, the new packet of textures or pencils, and they think, oh my god, so exciting. And just poring over them and then doing the rainbows and checking every colour and lining them all up. It was just, the best.
Coloured contact?
Yeah, coloured contact. Oh, so exciting. So I always was obsessed with the colour. But then I remember when I went to my art school interviews, and I went for a few different departments. So the painting department, textiles, and printmaking, and I went to printmaking, and the interview panel said to me, you've got some potential here, but your colour's just too wild. You need to go to painting, and they need to teach you how to manage colour. So, because they just couldn't handle the way I did colour. So I did go to painting, and over 4 years they managed to subdue me into being slightly monochrome. So greens and reds, not wild colours. But then when I went to after my undergrad I went to Sydney, and I was so inspired by all the terrace houses, like all the different colours of pinks and yellows. And so I was like, I'm going to try some of these colours out. And then when I went to New York, everything was grey. All the buildings were grey, all the people were grey, and I can't look at the best colour in the world. One bad colour. Yeah. So everything was just so monochromatic, and I think I had this reaction when the sky was warm, and this huge flood of colour just came out of me, like as part of the homesickness, and I started making the wild colours again from way back before my undergrad. And I remember someone saying in a critique when they just came up to me and said, oh my god, you're so wild with colour, you're so free, how do you do it? Like it was something that I actually, everyone was afraid of, and that sort of brings me back to the whole idea of colour crime. And I was talking to Gina before about my house being white, red and lime green, and how terrified I was at painting in that colour, because I thought, well, I do have a nasty neighbour, and I important to the plan. But he didn't. But I just thought, people can't handle it. And you can't even buy 10 litres of bright colours for that. You have to buy it in 4 litres. So,
do you find that people are drawn to certain pieces for the therapy that they may get from choosing those colours, or do you just find that they're just drawn to it because
people are definitely drawn to what they consider their favourite colour. Yeah. And I guess I did a little bit of research into colour psychology and how people respond to colour, but there's also a cost for that. So it's a bit like that New York experience where the culture just couldn't the colour that I was bringing to it. And you know, see that in the culture, like the colour sensibility is just completely different. So I think it's a bit of both, but I think people like to believe that their favourite colour is just about them, it's completely subjective, when often there's the cultural umbrella over the top, so you know, the whole cliche. I like to have the white things because I like minimalism and I like things to be sparse and neutral, like the idea that white is neutral. It's not necessarily neutral at all, it's just a fashion. And I don't know, it's most people's favourite colour is blue. And I found that really challenging because that used to be my least favourite colour. But I've come around. I'm getting the joy of blue now as well.
And your research you said about colours, what did you find out about blue? Why people want to this?
There's lots of theories, but you know, the sky, nature, the kind of effect, the emotional effect of blue, people, and there's blue everywhere. So it's common. In fact, when I was younger, I hated pink and I hated purple. And I had the art school uniform black one, and that was all. I didn't get one pair of shoes. Quite a long time. Unfortunately, that's much worse. Trying to get back to that stage. But actually happened in Sydney, the pink terrace houses. And I guess something happened that I just became completely drawn to pink. And then it became a defining principle. And it kind of became a joke, but everyone was like, Jodie's the pink girl. So now I can't help it, except that because my daughter Mia has been obsessed with pink and purple, that's made me feel really like, and thank God she started to pick other colours. We made a cake the other day, the icing got to be green.
I wanted to talk about your projects and how you came about creating patterns and what the inspiration was for a few of them.
Okay. So most of my work, even my earlier painting work, was inspired by interior spaces, and I was always interested in that idea that, you know, we'll have a portrait of someone and there'll be a whole context to that portrait, but what's the important part of the book is usually the figure. But the background or the ground has always been ignored, but it has so much information and so much power in stimulating memory and ideas of place and space. So I became fascinated with that from way back, looking at my great-grandmother's house. She had these beautiful pressed metal ceilings that were falling down in the dilapidated library house on the farm. It was just, you know, falling apart. And I started to think about how every night she would lie back and look up at these pressed metal ceilings, and that became part of her life, and her domestic experience and her work and her toil was all kind of every night she would be looking at these patterns on the crack on the wall. So I became fascinated with those kinds of patterns and looking at the background as the foreground, sort of abstracting ideas of memory in place through that and colour as well. So this body of work was generated for the collaborative exhibition that I had before, which was about creating a space or a fantasy memory house, a house where the scale was changed and different time intervals with figurative work to go in that space. So I chose then a range of patterns from different times in my life and my movement. So it was looking at almost an archaeology of time. And so the patterns have been sourced from all of those kind of things. So we've got, I think I should grab one. So here's some patterns. So this pattern here is sourced from a tie that my dad had in the 70s. One of my great fascinations was Dad's tie cupboard, because it was so magical. It was full of colour and pattern, and they're all layered on top of each other, so I was always in there really excited by the tie pattern. So this is his 70s tie. This one here is the kitchen colander pattern. So looking at domestic objects and trying to, there's some great beauty, simple things and simple patterns. Also a reference to domestic toil, like the kitchen, the daily life, that this pattern is part of. So that's one of my favourite ones. In fact, I make curtains out of that one. This one references an Art Nouveau fireplace in the house I live in. This one's the kitchen lino pattern in my 40s cottage, and I love that pattern, and I hate it. It's white with blue, and that's on the bench, the countertops. That white. So even when I redo the kitchen, I'm somehow triggered with this pattern. But I ripped up the lino off the kitchen floor. I didn't say anything. I can't believe it. I know. This one's a doily pattern, so it's quite popular, and that's the whole culture of doilies and nanas and doilies. And again, when I was a kid, it seemed such a strange thing to do. With doilies everywhere. But now, of course, they're quite fascinating and beautiful, and particularly the handmade ones are exquisite. I think that's all on this particular string. So there's a few other patterns you can see over there. There's a lime green one is a reference to my 70s bedroom, which was lime green. And I actually had Maramika curtains, of course, at the time I had no idea. And then Mum also had some black and white Maramika curtains in the 70s kitchen. And when I was a teenager, I accidentally dyed them all when I was dyeing silk scarves, as we did in the 80s. She was horrified, and now I look back and I'm horrified too. It was so beautiful. There's also a little blue pattern of little flowers, which was reference to a dress that my Nana Cunningham used to wear when she milked the cows. And she's like this, she's an amazing woman, like this little old lady, single mum, like her husband died when he was 45. She brought up 4 kids on the farm and would get up at the crack of dawn and go and milk the cows, and she never wore pants. She only ever wore dresses and stockings, which had tons of holes in them, and so that was a reference to the dress. And then there's the black one with the holes in the circle. That's just the coffee planter, so that's an important part of everyone's life. And then there's a black damask pattern at the top there, which just references a dune cover pattern. And in fact, a lot of my fascination with patterns always went back to damasks and that kind of imagery. When I lived in Sydney, I worked at Government House, and it has a lot of really beautiful artwork, hand-painted and stenciled artwork on the walls from the late 1800s, and that was so inspiring to see that. Also to see that it was all hand-done.
Lastly, where is the work?
All over the world! Well, I'm really excited to keep working with perspex because of the quality of light and the colour, and because most of my paintings were very much constructed, like collages, not necessarily painted. So being able to literally construct and play with pieces is exciting. So I'd like to be able to carry that further. I've really tried to push into the third dimension with the exhibition that I had in fall, and made some kind of jellyfish forms, but that was very challenging for a two-dimensional line. So I'd like to push that a bit further. But also looking, it's the first time I've really looked at having a commercial stream to my work, as well as a high art stream. And I'd like to look at making homewares, like light boxes and screens and garden products that are inspired by similar things, but actually using more commercial products. And they're colourful and not just corten steel, although I love corten steel. Wouldn't it look great with some pink perspex? So yeah, lots of ideas, but I also want to do more paintings again, and I've been doing some digital drawings, and so it's all about time.
So anyone like to ask
do you ever think, you tried all these different medias and even different colours to a degree, that there's been a best time and place for your work? Do you feel like there's a context within Canberra that works best for what you're doing now, or when you're in New York, you were suiting that era, like that time?
That's an interesting... The early work, my undergrad work, and the first stuff I did in New York, which was also based on patterning, it had a lot of wax medium in it, and so it was very visceral and skin-like, the surface, and people really responded to the texture of that work.
Yeah.
And people still say when they see that work, oh, I love that work. It was incredibly fragile and incredibly toxic to make, but very sensitive. So I guess it was to look terrible in slides as well. So I realised when I wanted to apply for scholarships and things, it had no substance in a digital image. So I'm not sure it's the best time and place, but I guess as far as getting that response to memory and pattern and kind of a real visceral response, people have responded to those the best. But I used to, to make them, I'd get a 2 metre canvas and pour Turks all over it, boiled Turks. And then I'd be in a small closed room, and I'd have gas masks, and the filters would fill up in like 10 minutes and be done. And then I'd just throw the gas mask away and keep working. So, not else could do it.
So you had to change your practice as well.
I couldn't do it. And now I'm so sensitive to Turks. If I open Turks, I just start spinning. So it was that thing when you're in your 20s and you're doing your art. It's like, oh, it's all for the art, it's worth it, I don't care. And you do have this kind of sense that you're not mortal. And if you are, it doesn't matter because you make great art. It's probably done. And suddenly you realise, well, that art's all dissolving away because I didn't make it properly, and you actually want to keep moving and make better art.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to the question. I always think with every body of work, I love what I'm doing and want to keep, but then I get to the point where I'm sick of it and want to move to the next body of work. But it all relates, it's all part of the same.
Also, that seems to be a very common story where people go through a school, and the school has a style, and you learn the school style, and then at the other end you sit there and you go, no, I want to do what I was doing before. And I don't actually know how that's a question, but
it's actually did they beat something out of me and then I just got it back and really when I'm joking did I learn anything? I think the process of deviating is really important. Like I think you learn heaps when you deviate and try new things. Of course I constantly tell students, a couple of times it's okay, and that you come back to it with a sophistication that you didn't have before. Hopefully, maybe I'm just rationalising, but certainly I didn't even understand colour theory until quite recently, which is quite ironic considering my work's always been about colour. I took it on to the level at which I wanted to, and mostly I work in June. It's only when I really had to teach colour theory, I went, oh, that's what I really want. So yeah, I think it's an important process. I don't think if I'd done that, I think I would have moved forward.
So was it, even though the deviation, even though you came back to this the same sort of place, the deviation was important?
Oh, absolutely, because it's not exactly the same place. It was wrong. Now, of course, it's very
You said just recently you've been introducing a more commercial aspect to your work. What made you go that way? And is it different?
It is different, and I spent years trying to avoid it. I remember a story, the roses in them. There was these earlier paintings where they were nearly all abstract, and there was this biscuit tin that was my nana's that had the 50 stylized roses on it. I started painting these roses on my abstract paintings or with my abstract paintings as part of activating them. This was, back before I went commercial. But I found it a real struggle because everyone would walk into my exhibition, I want that rose painting. All the rose paintings would sell. I had commissions. I could paint roses for the rest of my life. I live off it. But it was boring and it wasn't what the work was about. It was part of a much bigger body of work. So at that point I rejected the commercialism completely because I felt like I wasn't then true to the work. This body of work, when I was conceiving of making it, I realised it was going to be astronomically expensive, and in fact I had to remortgage my house to pay for it, which was crazy. Like I felt that was a really great dangerous thing to be doing. So I also designed it so I could repurpose the pieces. So these were all part of a large installation that then I could pull apart and make into something else. So it's a bit of a design project for me to see if I could use them in both contexts. And an adventure. And so now I feel like, well, the original work was not compromised. The only kind of parameter on that original work was that I could pull it apart and repurpose it. So the idea of flat packing or modules. And then the new work is taking those modules and making them into something different that is jewellery or homewares that people can. And so to me it's a really good model because I haven't actually, the ideas in the original work wasn't all about what people like or what colours people like. How it is affecting me with the jewellery in particular because I notice then what colours people buy and what people want to wear. And so then I go there. So I really want to be serious jewellery designer, but then I actually need to be considering all those other factors that a designer considers that potentially a visual artist isn't. It's not their primary concern. So, but I'm actually really loving the adventure because it's more learning. And also it's exciting to see it out there and people enjoying it.
Do you find that the colour palette that you have to work with is as the acrylics that you use limiting to the creativity?
Actually, at first I did, and part of the reason it was astronomically expensive was because I had to then, there were no pinks or lime greens in Australia, so I had to go offshore, and then I had to order large quantities. And so I could get my favourite colours. So it took, to source all of these colours actually took a very long time. Now when I'm making the pieces up, so if I'm making a wall or some hangers, I don't have all the colours I would like. I actually think it's pushing me further because now I can't just go back to the default, oh let's pick a pink one. I actually have to, what can I do with this, how can I make that work? So I've actually learned a lot. I think the limitations actually push me much further.
So, apart from making you learn colour theory properly, how has teaching most recent phase influenced your practice?
In so many ways. Like teaching process, seeing how you can actually get students to go from one point to another and you've got to test things, sample things, be patient, do more research. That has been the process that I've been teaching has been the most rewarding thing I've done for me. That I've understood process in a way that I didn't before. Working with people who are also incredibly creative is so stimulating. So every day you're talking to my colleagues who are incredibly creative, but the students are incredibly creative and have their own problems and issues. And so it's such a privilege to be able to engage with their ideas. And their ideas, you know, if you're teaching them to engage with their ideas where they're at, not to with your ideas. And you know, I do joke with some students, I always tell them to make a pink, so I come to them and say, oh, I really like that pink one. But, you know, that is actually, the reason I joke about it is to make sure I don't do it.
Make it obvious.
And actually, yeah, and make it clear that it's really exciting to engage with them with their intellectual journeys.
Right. Yeah.